Hi, everyone. Welcome to A Girl in Love with Tech podcast. My name is Rachel Rabo. I'm a Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador, a Dynamics 365 CRM developer, and a Power Platform developer. Our special guest for today is Jackie, and we are going to be talking about Power BI and Excel. So, hi, Jackie.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you so much for the invite.
Yeah,
I'm
thank,
excited to be here. And hi to everyone out there in the world of whatever platform you're watching us on. Thanks for joining us.
yeah, thank you so much. And this live is being recorded live on It's streamed live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. And you can get the recorded podcast on Spotify, Google Podcast. I think we no longer have Google Podcast anymore, but you can get it on Instagram, and also you can definitely get it on Anchor Podcast. Yeah.
Wow, so many platforms. Well, awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. And okay, if you could introduce yourself so that we can know more about you.
Okay, well, I will try to keep this brief. My name is Jackie. Last name is pronounced, if you're in America, it's pronounced Kiadi,
Okay.
or Kiadi, rather. If you're
Yeah.
in Liberia, it's pronounced Kiedi.
Okay.
I grew up in Liberia, but I'm half Liberian, half African American.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I spent my formative years in Liberia. And actually, me being in IT is a diversion because my dream was to be an attorney and
Yeah.
to serve on the Liberian Supreme Court.
Wow.
But I got diverted. So we moved back to the States. And, I was doing college, then I went to work. And I was working in an office setting. This was back 30 years ago
Okay.
when, we were using things like VisiCalc before Excel. And
Yeah.
if you had to print your Excel workbook, you had to use a ruler because you had to make
Wow.
sure that your margins were set. There was no such thing as setting the margins on the screen. So this was a long
Yeah.
time ago.
Yeah.
And, computers in the office were coming into the forefront. People were just so terrified of computers. I mean, people will, if they had to do something on the computer, I mean, there were some people who would literally cry if they had
Wow.
to do things on the computer. And as
Yeah.
for me, I just remember what I was always taught growing up.
Yeah.
My dad, who's a professor, used to always say, if you do the things that are difficult, you can always write your own ticket. So
Yeah.
while everybody else was scared, I was like, oh, okay. If I can learn this scary IT thing, then I could maybe be independent and make
Yeah.
decent money.
Yeah.
And it was also very challenging. That also wanted me to do it, and I knew that it would always change. That I would always have to keep learning in order to keep my job.
Yeah.
So
True.
all of that appealed to me.
Yeah. That's amazing.
And
Yeah.
that's why even now it moves even faster than it used to back 20 years ago. Now you have to keep up on a daily basis
Yeah. You do. You have to.
or you get left behind, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Left behind. Yeah.
So that's what attracted me to it. And then also as a woman in technology, I figured that it's a field that you just have to be good at what you do. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you look like, whether whatever,
Yeah.
as long as you have the skills, there would be a path made for you. And that
Yeah.
I could have independence. If I wanted to have a family, I could have a flexible work schedule. So all
Yeah.
of those things, that's what made me come into IT.
Yeah. That's amazing. I think I have a question for you.
Mhm,
I did not know like you came from wanting to be a lawyer.
mhm.
Was there like a transferable skill for you from being a lawyer to being in IT?
So I never did go to law school, right? But the
Okay.
transferable skills, I think, okay, so I wanted to major in English, do journalism, and then go to law
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
The transferable skills are being curious,
Yeah.
right? Um, having a respect for facts.
Okay.
What are the facts? Those are all things that having an attention to detail, wanting to find out what the real story is and being curious, those are
Yeah.
all things that will translate into a data analyst career.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks it's about the technology, but for those who want to rise above just being a commodity,
Yeah.
you have to be curious. What is this
Very
business
true.
about,
Yeah,
right?
very true.
Why do they want these charts? Who wants these charts?
Yeah.
Who, is there a particular answer they're looking for from this data?
Yeah.
All those, that kind of curiosity, those are all the things that you need to bring in so that when people talk about you as a data analyst, they say, wow, Rachel is so smart. She understands the business. She knows who
Yeah.
everybody is, so you have to understand the human part of it. So all of those are skills that are really applicable in IT, in data analysis.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I think most times people forget about the soft skills.
Hmm.
They leave out the soft skills and they like raise up technical skills, like, okay, have to be so good in this. But you still have to have your soft skills. It's very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Storytelling with data. I find that people who actually have a journalism background do very well in data because
Yeah.
they can tell stories, they can understand things. So the storytelling aspect of data analysis um, also is very important. And like you said, the soft skills. Um, a lot of times I see people do dashboards
Yeah.
and the graphs are beautiful,
Okay.
but what is it saying?
Yeah, sure.
If I look at it, what are you trying to tell me? What can I pick up just by looking at your dashboard? So I think that's where the soft skills make it easy, can transfer into that.
Yeah,
So
amazing.
anyway, so I went to corporate. I worked in IT for a few years. I always wanted to start my own business. And I left to start my own business.
Yeah.
Then they called me back. They said, come back. So I went back for a few years, then I left again. So back in 2001 was when I left, finally to start my own business. Doing basically when I was in corporate, I did data analysis. I worked with
Yeah.
Excel. I worked with Access. I worked with Visual Basic for applications, automating them. And that's what I did in corporate. And then I came into my own business and I started training. And then so now I train, I
Okay.
consult, and then my third hat is I have to run my own business as a business owner. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like my background and where I am now.
Yeah, that's really amazing, Jackie. That's amazing. Yeah, that's really amazing. And for our listeners, like maybe this is the first time they're hearing about Microsoft Excel,
Mhm,
or this is the first time they're hearing about Microsoft Power BI, or they have heard of it, but they
mhm.
don't know what it is used for. So, what do you say to them?
Okay. So for Microsoft Excel is like the Swiss Army knife. It can do so much, right?
Okay.
You can use Excel as just a database. Like
Yeah.
if you want to keep track of, let's say, gosh, I don't know, you have your kickball team and
Okay.
you want to keep track of all of the people on your kickball team and their telephone number and their email address and everything, you can put that in Excel because what Excel allows you to do is organize things in grids by rows and
Yeah.
columns. So it helps you to keep those things organized and sort them.
Okay.
Um, for example, in some fields, like for example, I used to teach for a hospital authority. I taught a lot of their employees. They never did calculations. Most of them never did any formulas. They just used that
Yeah.
Excel for attendance lists, for databases and stuff like that. So it's really easy to get started and you
Yeah.
can use it as a database. But then you can also use it for basic personal calculations. So you can use it to manage your budget, your household
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
And then
I've
you
seen
can
lots of
get
persons
very
online
complicated.
who do that. Yeah.
Yes, you can get very complicated. You can use it to manage whole businesses and
Yeah.
do complex financial analysis.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing about Excel. You can use what it is that you need. You don't have to know the whole thing. You can get in, what is it, get in where you fit in? Whatever
Yeah.
small part you put into Excel, that's the part you
Yeah.
end up using.
Yeah. It's amazing. And what about what is Power BI?
Okay, so when I explain things to people about Power BI, I tell them, I said, remember when we were in the midst of COVID, you would see all of these maps and charts
Yeah.
about, which places were better, which places were worse,
Yeah.
how many people were ill in different places. That's something that Power BI can generate for you. So
Okay.
what Power BI can do is you can take a bunch of data from different places,
Yeah.
websites, from Excel, from all what you may call it,
Access. You can take.
Access, SQL, different, all these different places. You can take all of that data, bring it into Power BI, and then use it to give beautiful charts and graphs
Yeah.
that are also interactive so that you can share them with the user, and the user can go and modify these to only see what they want to see. So
Yeah.
just think of Power BI as a great sifter. You can
Okay.
take everything, dump it in,
Yeah.
sift it, and then only show what you want to show as the output.
Yeah. That's a
And
that's a beautiful explanation.
oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay, thank you. And then if you empower your users, they can take a look at your output and say, "I am not interested in this outlook. This is the output I want." Click a few buttons, and they can make their own personalized reports. So
Yeah.
that's the two.
Yeah, thank you so much. And another question I have to ask you is that I see a lot of questions online,
Mhm,
especially on Twitter and the Nigerian community, where a lot of persons they are trying to ask like, okay, I'm trying to come into data.
mhm.
I want to start my journey in data, but I don't know which particular tool to learn. And now we are talking in between Microsoft technology, which is Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Power BI. So I don't know if I should start with Microsoft Excel or I should start with Microsoft Power BI. Where do you think they should start from? Yeah.
I don't think that they necessarily have to start with Excel.
Okay.
If you already know Excel, it's good. That's a good starting point because a lot of the knowledge that you know in Excel will transfer into Power BI.
Yeah.
So if you know how to create charts and graphs in Excel, it transfers to Power BI. If you know Power Query in Excel, it transfers to Power BI. But
Yeah.
you don't have to start with Excel.
Okay.
Um, what you can do if you wanted to start with Power BI, these are some of the core skills that you will need. You would need to understand databases, like relational databases.
Yeah.
So things like the database, so you would need a class in something like database concepts to
Okay.
understand things like, one to many, many to many relationships, those types
Yeah.
of things, how to set up your tables, how to set up your
Yeah.
schema. That is something, that is knowledge that you need, whether you're going to use Power BI or use other databases. So that's somewhere, if you wanted to skip Excel, or even if you needed to know Excel, you do need that basic database knowledge. And
Yeah.
that's something sometimes I forget to tell people that, because when I went to college for my degree in computer information systems, that's
Okay.
one of the things they taught us. So
Yeah.
when I started to work with Power BI, I already knew that. And sometimes I forget that people don't know.
Yeah. True.
Um, so you would need to know about databases. You would also need to know some SQL,
Okay.
and and then from there you can just go into learning Power BI itself. But knowing how to model data, knowing how to set up databases, that's definitely something you would need to know, whether you went through the Excel route or
Yeah.
just jump right into Power BI.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really amazing because for what you pointed out about databases, for
Mhm.
me, I had that same issue, but this is not concerning data right now. This is concerning Microsoft Power Platform.
Okay.
I did not really have much idea about how to work with databases, relationships, one-to-many relationships, and all of that.
Mhm.
So it was actually nice when I completed the course on it. So
Yes.
yeah, so even with being a Microsoft Power Platform developer, I still had to learn about database fundamental. So yeah, it's very, very important.
Yeah, and I would say, if you are going to get into Power BI, definitely understanding the other components of the Power Platform and
Yeah.
understanding Azure, that
Mhm.
cannot hurt you at all. In fact, it will help you, especially if you work with larger organizations. If you're working with a larger organization,
Yeah.
definitely understanding the Power Platform, understanding Azure will come in handy.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you
No,
so
sure.
much. Yeah, and while we're talking about learning,
Mhm.
how can one get started with learning either Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Power BI?
Okay, so let's get those of you who are interested or watching this on the replay, let's
Yeah.
get our pen and paper handy, okay? So the thing is, you said, how will one get started with Excel or Power BI?
Yes.
I would say item number one is to get started with a goal.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so what is your goal? For example, in Excel, if your goal is to pass the Excel expert certification exam,
Yeah.
your task might be different than if your goal is to learn data analysis for Excel.
Okay.
So if you want to learn data analysis for Excel, these are the things I would suggest as a start. I would suggest within Excel, I would suggest learning the formulas to deal with text.
Okay.
So things to clean up your text functions that help you clean up your data.
Yeah.
Things like, left, right, mid, concatenate, all those different text functions that help you clean up your data, because
Yeah.
you never get clean data. That's one of the
Yeah.
things you've got to learn to clean it up,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
You would also want to know all of the logical functions, the if functions, and like I
Okay.
call them, all of their first cousins, some
Yeah.
ifs, average ifs, all of those.
Yeah.
That's the second
Okay.
set. You
Yeah.
want to know your lookup functions. X lookup has made life a lot easier, but you also
Yeah.
still want to know your V lookup, your match, your index, right?
Okay.
So those are the functions. Then I would move on to Power Query
Yeah.
within Excel. How can you use Power Query to input your data, to clean up your data, and to automate the process of generating reports,
Okay. Yeah.
right? So that's Power Query. You would also want to know pivot tables.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to know Power Pivot, but that may not be that necessary, because you can do stuff in Power Query and bypass
For
bypass
example,
Power Pivot.
yeah, pivots.
And then what's the last thing? And then lastly, you would need to know Visual Basic for applications.
Okay.
Not in depth, but you would need to know it enough to know how to automate some of your processes. So we
Okay.
went through, what did we say? Text functions for cleanup.
Yeah. Concatenate. If. Yeah.
Yeah, concatenate, LEN, trim, all of those. If
And I.
functions.
Okay. While we talk about, sorry for interrupting you. While we talk about cleaning,
Mhm,
there's something I when you brought it up,
mhm,
I've seen a lot of questions on it. That's one of the issues people have.
mhm,
They have issues with cleaning
mhm.
data.
Yes.
So what do you think about that? How can they go about it to help them make it easier?
Okay, so those text functions will help you, but the biggest thing that will help you is Power Query. I
Okay.
cannot overstate how awesome Power Query is
Yeah.
for a data analyst. So I
Okay.
would definitely get into, really dig deep into knowing Power Query, because that's going to be your best friend when it
Yeah.
comes to cleaning up data,
Yeah.
especially because you can save your steps and reuse them. So
Yeah.
every month, all you have to do is hit refresh and go through all the steps. That's part of what I do when I automate things, is set up their Power Query, so they just have to hit
Yeah.
refresh to
Okay.
regenerate the reports.
Well,
So
that's really amazing. Yeah.
that's
That's
what so for cleaning, that's what I would recommend. And I don't know if I talked about pivot tables in Excel,
yeah.
but also how to create dashboards in Excel. And so pivot tables and dashboards are kind of like the next step on top of pivot tables. So
Okay.
if you know all of those things I mentioned in Excel, that's a good starting point for being an Excel data analyst.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think most times people do not really look at Excel as a big fact that they need to learn. They think that, okay, Excel has been there for so many years, so I don't have to think so much about learning Excel.
You know what? As people who are in technology, we always get excited about the latest and greatest, and
Yeah,
we want to bring everybody along.
yeah,
But in the real world, you've got to deal with the tools that people use.
yeah, true.
And sometimes you have to be a little bit of a diplomat. Sometimes people do not want to leave their Excel. And
Yeah,
there's a big joke in the Power BI community. You create all these beautiful visualizations, and then people are
yeah.
like, "But I want it in Excel. I want my data in Excel." So, I work for small all the way to Fortune 50 organizations, and all these
Yeah,
people in there are using Excel. And so
yeah,
again, you have to meet the people where they are in order to bring them to where you want to take them.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's really true. Because so many people they are thinking that okay, Excel has been there for so many years. There are new tools that are coming up, so there's really no need really factoring the learning of Excel. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, it might not be. I mean, you like I said, you can skip Excel and go straight to the Power BI and study the Power Platform. But
Yeah,
just know there are still communities of people that are still using that Excel. So if you know Excel, doesn't mean you're too, you're too far back. You're a dinosaur. You can't get a job, or you can't get
yeah,
positions if you know Excel.
yeah. And you have transferable skills with knowing Excel. You can transfer your skills into Power BI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep. And
yeah,
sometimes if you know, even if you're hired as an Excel data analyst, the fact that you know Power BI is sometimes an added plus, and that may end up getting you the job and even
yeah.
getting you more money if you know both. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, amazing. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think another question I have to ask you is that we have that mindset that okay, I want to learn a particular, I want to go, let me say for instance, I want to go into data. I want
Mhm,
to be a data analyst.
mhm,
And now I'm thinking about okay, what are the tools I can learn? And I've not thought about the soft skills part of it, or I have not thought about the fundamentals part of it. Like, okay, I have to learn storytelling, I have to learn how to use colors, I have to learn how to use when to use a chat. There are so many things to learn out there. I just think that okay, no, I want to start with Power BI and I start doing visualization, start building dashboards when I really don't have an idea about colors, about how to use the different charts. So what do you think about this?
yes, so there are different skill sets, right? There's the
Yeah,
whole idea of data visualization, which goes beyond the technical part of just using the most, awesome charts you can use.
yeah,
It's all about what exactly like you said, storytelling.
yeah,
What story do you want to tell? What story does your client want to tell? And how can you use your charts to tell that story?
yeah,
Um, the other thing that's missed is how important it is, especially you're getting into Power BI. This is not, to tell you the truth, everybody wants to do the pretty charts.
yeah,
This is the tech side that doesn't really excite people, but it excites nerds like me.
yeah,
Um, Cleaning up the data is important, and also modeling your data, because what you want is when you create your Power BI report, you want it to be fast.
okay,
And there's a skill set in that, is knowing how to design your model so that it's fast and efficient, so that when
okay,
somebody clicks on something, they're not sitting there waiting for their
yeah,
answer.
yeah,
So you mentioned storytelling. That's one of
yeah,
that's a soft skill that you really need to get good. And there's a whole, like I said, I have like, I'm looking at my bookshelf. I have like at least 6 books over there just about visualization, about
yeah,
storytelling, about how do you make your person hone in on the message that you're trying to convey. Because people only have a few seconds to look at your report and get the
yeah,
gist of what it is.
yeah,
In addition to which, where you place certain items on the report, right? People
okay,
have probably learned that people look at it in a Z pattern, like so.
okay.
So the things that are most important, you want
Has
them
to
to be
be,
in that Z formation so
yeah,
that people actually grasp those items. So yes,
okay,
indeed, soft skills are very important. One other thing I would say, Rachel, I know you have other questions. I just want to mention this.
yeah,
Something as a data analyst, um, people have to trust you,
yeah,
that when you output data, that
okay,
it is correct. And
yeah,
that's something that's, take a few moments. If they give you something to say, oh, these are the sales figures,
okay,
blah, blah, blah. Take a moment and look at that and see, does that make sense? Or
okay,
are there might be mistakes in this data? And become
yeah,
known as the person who takes a look at everything and asks questions. Well,
yeah,
I noticed, I did this with a client. They measure how much percentage of people completing some training course. And
okay,
I noticed that the previous quarter, it was at 93% completion.
yeah,
But then this quarter is at 85% completion. So
okay,
I'm like,
yeah,
that doesn't look right. Why is it going
yeah,
down? And
Maybe.
so look at the data, ask the questions, and it turns out it was correct. They had hired some new people who hadn't completed any training, so that's why their figures went down. But become known as the person that they can trust to make
Yeah.
sure that whatever output you give them is correct. Don't just accept what they give you and then just sit there and start, generating reports.
Yeah.
Take a look at what it is you're working on.
Yeah. And as you just mentioned that, I just thought about this.
Mhm,
What in this, let me say for this particular scenario,
mhm,
you are giving a data to clean and also to create visualization of what is happening in that data. And you
mhm,
are giving a very short deadline. Maybe you
mhm,
are giving 3 days to actually complete that.
mhm,
You are giving 3 days to complete that.
mhm,
But when it will actually take 2 weeks. So how
mhm.
do you handle that kind of situation? Do you hurry? Do you say no? How do you handle it?
Well, it's different for me because I'm mature in my field, and sometimes if your entry level is a lot tougher, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But when you touch it, you own it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So sometimes when they put it in your lap and you take it, that becomes your problem. So
Yeah.
it's better that you respond to the person and say, "Hey, look, I need to clean it up. I need to test my reports. I need to do this. Clean up typically will take me 2 days. Testing will take me this time. This and that will
Yeah.
take me this time." Explain to them why it's going to take you 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
then see if we can negotiate. If you still need it in 3 days, what can we negotiate? Maybe we don't do all the data, but we take a subset and
Okay.
do that. Or maybe we give it out with a big disclaimer that says, we still need to go back and do some checking. So
Yeah.
it's going to take 2 weeks. This is why it's going to take 2 weeks. This is what I have to do. Now, what
Okay.
can we take off of the table so that you can get it in 3 days? Or are you willing to give me my 2 weeks?
Yeah. Yeah. That's really nice advice. Yeah. Like I was thinking maybe just say no, I can't do this.
Look, at the end of the day, it might end up being no, but at least you gave them
Yeah.
the option, right?
Yeah. It's amazing. The option is great. Like they get to decide to
Mhm,
choose what will go for them. Yeah.
mhm.
Nice.
And sometimes people don't realize what it takes. How many, like how you have to test 5 different ways to come up with a way of doing something. A lot of
Yeah.
times the client doesn't know that unless you tell them.
Yeah, sure. And I think we have a question.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
okay. Elijah is just talking about emphasis on clean data. Yeah.
Mhm.
Jackie has like hit it on this one.
Yes, yes, yes. If you really love cleaning up data like I do, and I know you've heard of Oz, right? Who's another Excel MVP. You haven't heard
Okay.
of Oz?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, you have to know him, but that's his big thing is cleaning up dirty data as well.
Okay. Yeah. Amazing. And he also has a question to say, so if one doesn't know how to write M code, learning Power Query in Excel could be difficult.
I disagree.
Okay.
Um, One of the things that you can get a long way without really knowing M code in depth.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things you can do, this is very easy. When you
Okay.
go into Power Query, go to the View tab and put
Yeah.
a check mark next to the formula bar.
Okay.
What that will do is, as you're going through your steps in Power Query, you're able to see the M code behind the query. And so you get to learn M code a little bit, just by viewing it. And
Yeah.
so, I can create a step and maybe I can copy and paste that step and make a couple of tweaks to
Okay.
it to get the result. So that's one quick way of learning M query, but you don't really need to be knee deep in the M language,
Yeah.
just by turning on that formula bar. Something else you can use in Power Query is the create a column by example feature. And you guys
Okay.
can Google this.
Yeah.
That also helps you where you give it an example and
Okay.
Power Query will actually create the M code behind it so that you don't have to learn
Yeah.
M code. Absolutely, learning M code is really going to help you, but
Yeah.
you don't need it in order to easily be able to clean up your data in Excel.
Okay. I think I have another question concerning that.
Okay.
For our listeners, maybe this is the first time they're hearing about M code. So
Mhm.
what is M code?
So the M is the language behind Power Query. Okay. So when you open up Power Query, as you're doing your steps, everything, a lot of things are made really easy on the menu. So you click
Yeah.
something to split up a column. As you're doing it, Power Query is actually writing the code in the background
Yeah.
in the language called M. And
Okay.
then if you turn on the formula bar or you go to the advanced editor, you're
Yeah.
able to see the M code that Power Query is creating for you. So M, like you have DAX in Power BI,
Yeah.
M is in Power Query.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Thank you. And
Sure.
yeah, I think there's another question I have to ask you is on opportunities,
Mhm,
because most persons maybe they want to learn a particular tool,
mhm,
and the first thing they ask questions like, okay, am I going to, with me learning this particular tool or this particular platform, are
mhm.
there job opportunities out there for me? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. There are job opportunities, and these are some of the things that you can do to increase your job opportunities. First of all, I think we're all on LinkedIn. If you're not
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, please get on LinkedIn
Yeah.
and go to the jobs and look at what they're looking for whatever you're trying to do, data analysis or tool or whatever, so that
Yeah.
you train up to get those skills that you know employers are looking for.
Okay.
As you get skilled in those skills, add those. You also looking through the job postings for different keywords because
Yeah.
you want to make sure those keywords are also in your profile. Okay, so that's a couple of things you can do. Also, as you are learning, try to teach. As you are
Yeah.
learning something, start your own YouTube channel, start your blog. Actually, teaching people is the number one most effective way to remember what you learn. So, as
Yeah.
you're learning, start to teach, right? Because
Yeah.
you've done a great job of this, Rachel.
Yeah.
And it helps you become it helped you become the expert that you are by sharing your knowledge with other people. And
Yeah.
so, do that. But then you also get the added benefit as after you're sharing, then you become known. And that's how you attract those opportunities. So you're helping others, and then it ends up helping you as well.
Yeah, that's true. I think for me, for myself,
Hmm.
when I started my YouTube channel and also started writing blogs, before then I was learning.
Hmm.
Like, there's nothing like when you are learning, there's
Hmm.
a difference between you are learning and you are learning and building.
Yes,
There's a
yes,
very
yes,
big difference.
yes.
So with me just learning, it was really,
Hmm.
really difficult for me to actually catch up.
Hmm.
Like something like you read the learning parts now, and when you read it again the next time, it's like that is not the same learning parts you read because
Yes.
you missed some things. Like you're like, okay. So with building and also teaching, sharing your knowledge, like, okay, this is how I built this. You already have it
Hmm.
stuck in your head. Okay. I've taught a lot of people. I told a lot of people. People ask me questions. Okay, this is how can I do this? You're like, okay, you can do this like this. You can do this like this. So next time it's actually helpful to you to know
Hmm.
that, okay, this is how to do this. Get stuck in your head that, okay, this is it. Yeah.
Yes, and to just piggyback off of what you were saying about building, of course you want to have your portfolio, especially if you're learning Power BI, you want to be have a portfolio to showcase what it is that you've done.
Yeah.
Something else you can also do is think about, um, are there people that I can help? So
Yeah.
maybe you go to a Facebook group that has a bunch of business owners and
Yeah.
you ask them, hey, you have these e-commerce sites. Are you having problem with your Excel data, or do you need somebody to build dashboards for you? I'm
Okay.
willing to build dashboards for 3 or 4 people. Hit me
Okay.
up. And
Yeah.
therefore, that's how you get practical experience. And all of this, as you're doing it, you're sharing it. So people do not want to be sold to. They don't want for
Yeah.
people to, oh, I'm an Excel automation, blah, blah, blah. No.
Yeah.
But if they
Okay.
see what you can do and you're teaching them, they still
Yeah.
get that message. And when they start to look for somebody who's a Power BI developer, they
Yeah.
know that you are there and you have those skills.
Yeah, like my dad always says, I think he's a Nigerian. My dad will say, if you are selling gari and you are selling the gari, is a food in Nigeria. If you are
Mhm.
selling gari inside your house and you don't tell people in that particular area that you are selling gari, nobody is going to buy from you.
Yes, yes, yes. I know Gary, we call it farina, but it's the same thing or
Okay.
similar thing. But yeah, there's a saying, there's a Liberian saying, it says, good player never suffer for jersey. And what
Yeah.
that means, if you're a good player, there's always a team will be looking for you. But how do people know you're a good player unless you're out there, sharing what you know
Yeah.
with folks, helping people, and that's how
Yeah.
people come to know that you're a good player. So you get the
Yeah.
teams to pick you.
Yeah. Sure. Amazing. Yeah. Good. Nice. Yeah. And one other thing too, I want to ask you, like, you have shared so much, and also you talked about how to get opportunities, how to bring yourself out there, how to connect on LinkedIn, how to just reach out and ask. So one question I have to ask you is, career wise, what
Mhm.
advice do you have for people career wise?
Okay, so career wise, some of this is advice that I have not followed, but I've seen other people follow it to great
Yeah.
success.
Yeah.
Reach out to people who want to and ask people to mentor you.
Okay.
If there's
Yeah.
somebody who is ahead of you, whoops, sorry, I did something with my mouse. If there's
Yeah.
somebody who's ahead of you on the road, talk to them and see if they
Yeah.
can give you some advice, because they can give you advice that will save you, many months of doing the
Yeah.
wrong thing.
Yeah.
We also talked about, learning the skill.
Yeah.
One thing I would say, something I noticed when people, especially people, are switching fields.
Okay.
Sometimes they think, okay, I've worked in fashion merchandising, just an example, and now I want to
Yeah.
become a data analyst. I have to
Okay.
forget everything I know about fashion.
Yeah.
Nothing could be um, further from the truth.
Yeah.
Every industry has data,
Yeah.
right?
Sure. Yeah.
So if you are in fashion merchandising, you already understand the fashion merchandising, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you add the data on top, you are putting the icing on the cake. So now
Yes.
you can become the data person for the fashion merchandising industry,
Yeah.
which everybody wants to hire you now because they know you understand the industry and you
Yeah.
understand the data.
Yeah.
So do not neglect, if you're in the healthcare field, become the data person for healthcare. So do not neglect what you already know. Bring it with you into the data field. So
Yeah.
there's a lot that I could say about, career wise, but we
Okay.
already talked about become good at what you know and become well known.
Yes.
Um, know your industry and understand your industry. And yeah, I mean, if there are any other specific questions I can answer about that, I'm happy to. But those are just some of the tips I would give people. And
Yeah.
find a mentor.
Yeah. And one other thing too is that data is everywhere. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, data is everywhere. So you can come from anywhere. You can come from health. You can come from fashion. You can come
hmm
from anywhere at all and come into data because you're actually bringing a lot into data. You're transferring a lot into data. So yeah,
Yes, restaurants have data.
yeah,
African food stores have data. Everybody has data. So just stand with what you are doing, and then just put data on top of it.
yeah. Put it on top, stack it on top. Yeah. Okay. I think from Deborah, she said, "Jackie, you are the best. I have to go, but great knowledge, tidbits you have
Oh,
shared.
hi, Deborah.
Yeah.
Deborah
Hi.
is one of you remember Deborah from Power BI Women Group? And thank you, Deborah, because I wanted to mention the Power BI Women Group. Deborah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Um,
Okay. Let
for
me do it.
women who are in Power BI, look for
Yeah.
the Power BI Women Group on Meetup. We have meetings twice a month, and that's a good place to network and learn as well.
I'm
And
just
thank
checking.
you, Deborah, for your comment. That was very kind.
Yeah. And also, I shared Jackie's YouTube channel. You can connect with her too on LinkedIn. She's absolutely amazing. Like,
Thank
she's
you,
amazing.
amazing Rachel.
Yeah. So you can. She also has She has on Twitter. She shares so much knowledge on Excel shortcuts of how you can actually achieve things on Excel, and she has a newsletter. I also receive it. It says about shortcuts, and she also has a YouTube channel. So a lot to learn. Yeah, so follow her everywhere. Yeah,
Yes, I love to connect, and I'm happy to share. What I've learned. I'm happy to whether it's in career, starting your own consulting,
yeah,
or the tech tips. I'm happy to share what I know.
yeah. Thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome.
I think there's a question I need to ask you
hmm
is about shortcuts.
hmm
Like someone just getting started that actually do not have full knowledge about a platform, let's say for Excel. or
Mhm.
maybe Power BI. Do you think they should learn the shortcuts?
Mm, that's a good question. I'm not sure if that's the best because there are so many shortcuts
Yeah.
and all of them are not useful.
Okay.
And so maybe you want to learn the ones, if you learn how to do something a certain way, then maybe you want to go search for the shortcuts for that
Mhm.
particular thing. So if you know how to do pivot tables, then maybe you start looking for shortcuts related to pivot tables once you understand the fundamentals. So,
Okay.
on Twitter, I post a shortcut, I think a day or every other day,
Yeah.
but you don't have to absorb all of them. A lot of people will look at them and they will pick the ones that that apply to them. So
Yeah.
that's what I recommend.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
And thank you very much, everyone, for listening to us and also for joining in. Yeah. So,
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Rachel. This was great. I really appreciate it. This is a so everybody. If Rachel calls you and she wants you to come to her podcast, you better say yes because this was a great time. Thank you again.
yeah. Thank you so much, Jackie. And thank you very much for accepting my invite. So,
You are welcome.
bye, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.